August 24, 1944, Dayal Bay, Philippine Islands. The periscope of USS Harder barely pierced the water's surface, allowing Commander Samuel Dealey a narrow glimpse of the bay ahead. Through the small circular lens, he confirmed what his sonar operator had already detected: a Japanese escort frigate, designated CD-22, moving rapidly in their direction. The enemy vessel's captain had pinpointed the submarine's position with deadly accuracy. This encounter would mark the final tactical decision Dealey would make in his career, the same decision that had earned him a reputation across the Pacific as a formidable destroyer hunter. He had mastered the audacious tactic of firing 3 torpedoes directly into the oncoming path of enemy ships, a maneuver that reversed the traditional predator-prey roles in submarine warfare. Moments later, a series of 15 depth charges detonated, one after another. Nearby, the USS Harder registered each blast before an eerie silence settled over the waters. USS Harder, hull number 257, and its crew of 79 were lost, leaving no further record of their fate. Yet within this disappearance lay the realization of a tactical revolution, one that had begun just over a year earlier when Dealey challenged conventional naval assumptions about submarine engagements with Japanese destroyers. Samuel Dealey's transformation of American submarine doctrine was not born from sudden heroism but from repeated setbacks, mechanical failures, and a naval culture that had spent decades shaping submariners into cautious observers rather than aggressive combatants. To grasp the significance of these innovations, it is necessary to understand the pre-war role envisioned for submarines and why those ideas failed catastrophically once World War II reached the Pacific. When Dealey graduated from the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis in 1930, the Navy's submarine strategy prioritized caution above all. Submarines were expected to serve primarily as reconnaissance assets and to target major enemy warships, while merchant shipping was largely off-limits under the London Naval Treaty. Submarine exercises emphasized stealth and evasion over offensive action. Officers were praised for keeping their vessels undetected rather than for inventive tactics. Night operations were strictly prohibited, and even the sight of a periscope breaking the surface during drills could result in immediate dismissal. Young officers were trained to observe, conceal, and endure, with attacks limited to long-range, submerged engagements designed to minimize risk. Survival, not combat effectiveness, was institutionalized as the defining principle. Early in his career, Dealey conformed to this cautious model, learning the value of restraint and meticulous adherence to protocol. However, the limitations of this approach would soon become painfully clear once the realities of wartime conditions forced a re-evaluation of submarine strategy in the Pacific theater. Samuel Dealey was born on September 13, 1906 in Dallas, Texas. He completed his education at the United States Naval Academy in June 1930, embarking on his naval career aboard the battleship USS Nevada. In 1934, seeking a different path, he applied for transfer to the submarine school in New London, Connecticut. His first commanding officer remembered him as reserved and understated, qualities that fit seamlessly with the disciplined and quiet culture of 1932's submarine life. Over the next several years, Dealey served on a number of submarines, including S-34, S-24, Nautilus, and Bass, performing competently but without notable distinction. In the spring of 1940, Dealey temporarily left the submarine fleet to take up the post of executive officer aboard the destroyer USS Reuben James under Captain H.L. Prout. Tex Edwards, a close friend from Annapolis. During this period, the ship was engaged in neutrality patrols in the Gulf of Mexico, coordinating with British naval forces to intercept German submarines. On October 31, 1941, the Reuben James was torpedoed and sunk by a German submarine, resulting in the death of Captain Edwards and most of the crew. Only 45 of the 160 sailors survived. This loss profoundly affected Dealey. 5 weeks later, the Japanese assault on Pearl Harbor clarified Dealey's purpose. He immediately requested to return to submarine duty and was assigned command of the USS 20, a vessel used primarily for experimental purposes. From that point, he became intensely focused on preparing his crew for wartime operations, instilling rigorous training routines and demanding exacting standards. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, American submariners in the Pacific rapidly had to abandon their pre-war caution. Within hours, Navy headquarters ordered unrestricted attacks on Japanese shipping, an unprecedented mission that required submarines to take on a strategic offensive role rather than just defensive patrolling. Although U.S. naval planning had long regarded Japan as a potential adversary, pre-war doctrine had not envisioned submarines conducting blockade or commerce raiding campaigns. As the war progressed, returning commanders submitted detailed patrol reports, often 50-60 pages long, which documented tactics, successes, and failures. These reports became the foundation for a new operational philosophy emphasizing aggression and offensive action. Senior officers reviewed these accounts, offering feedback and adjustments that gradually evolved into formal doctrine. Yet this transformation came at a high cost. In 1942, nearly a third of submarine commanders were relieved for failing to demonstrate sufficient initiative or achieve measurable results. The Navy urgently sought officers capable of combining technical skill with the psychological fortitude to take calculated risks in combat. Samuel Dealey emerged as one of these rare officers. In September 1942, he was entrusted with command of the USS Harder, a newly built Gato-class submarine at the Electric Boat Company yard in Groton, Connecticut. The USS Harder, SS-257, was commissioned on December 2, 1942, less than a year after Pearl Harbor. The Gato class represented the latest in American submarine engineering. Measuring 311 feet in length with a 27-foot beam, these vessels displaced 1,525 tons on the surface and 2,424 tons submerged. 4 diesel engines provided surface propulsion while simultaneously charging batteries for underwater operations. Surface speed reached 20.5 knots, dropping to 9 knots while submerged, with a test depth of 300 feet, though experienced commanders occasionally exceeded this during emergencies. Armament included 10 21-inch torpedo tubes with a complement of 24 torpedoes and a 4-inch deck gun. Despite these strengths, Harder shared a critical flaw with 11 other submarines in its class: its diesel engines, adapted from German designs by the AG. Neherberg factory in the 1930 seconds proved chronically unreliable. This mechanical vulnerability would continue to challenge Dealey and his crew throughout their service. Undeterred, Dealey led Harder through rigorous shakedown exercises off the East Coast. After surviving a friendly fire incident involving a Navy patrol bomber in the Caribbean, he brought the submarine to the Pacific in the spring of 1943, arriving at Pearl Harbor fully prepared to begin combat operations. On June 7, 1943, the USS Harder departed from Pearl Harbor to begin her initial war patrol, setting a course for the southern coastline of Honshu, Japan. 2 weeks later, on the night of June 21, the submarine detected an enemy convoy consisting of 2 vessels. Commander Samuel Dealey maneuvered Harder into an attack position, utilizing radar to approach on the surface, and launched a salvo of 4 torpedoes. However, the operation quickly went awry. An alert enemy escort responded immediately, initiating a counterattack. Depth charges exploded around the submarine as Dealey ordered an emergency dive. Harder descended rapidly, her hull creaking under the immense water pressure. At an alarming depth, the submarine collided nose first with the muddy seabed near the Japanese coast. For tense moments, the vessel remained immobilized while the enemy continued to drop charges above. Eventually, Dealey managed to reverse and free the submarine, allowing it to retreat safely. This initial engagement highlighted several harsh realities of submarine warfare in 1943. Japanese convoy escorts were highly aggressive and skilled in anti-submarine tactics. Charted depths often proved inaccurate, putting submarines at risk of unexpected groundings. Most critically, destroyers and other escorts represented lethal threats that submarine commanders generally sought to avoid. At the time, prevailing doctrine emphasized evasion. Engaging a destroyer directly was regarded as extraordinarily hazardous and typically reserved for situations where conditions offered a distinct tactical advantage. Despite this, Deru interpreted the encounter differently. Having survived a direct confrontation with the destroyer at its most perilous, he concluded that with precise maneuvering and decisive action, submarines could operate aggressively without being destroyed. Just 2 nights later, on June 23, Deru achieved his first tangible success. The USS Harder torpedoed the Japanese seaplane tender Sagara Maru, a 7,000-ton vessel that was later beached and subsequently destroyed. Over the next 4 days, Deru executed 7 additional attacks against 3 separate convoys. Post-war evaluations credited him with inflicting possible damage on only 1 additional ship during this period, illustrating both the difficulty and danger inherent in these missions. Harder returned to Midway Island on July 7, 1943, with one of her 4 diesel engines completely inoperative. After rapid repairs and reloading of spare engine parts, she departed once again in late August for her second war patrol, returning to Japanese waters near Honshu. This patrol unfolded with far greater intensity. Within a span of just 14 days, Harder launched 9 attacks, ultimately sinking 5 enemy vessels totaling approximately 15,000 tons. On September 9, Harder successfully engaged and destroyed the cargo ship Koyo Maru, skillfully evading an escort at a range of only 1,200 yards. 2 days later, the submarine sank the cargo vessel Yoko Maru. On September 13, enemy aircraft forced Harder to dive to extreme depths, leading to a prolonged and grueling depth charge assault that lasted more than 48 hours. The submarine's batteries were nearly depleted, temperatures and carbon dioxide levels rose, and the crew faced intense psychological stress under the constant threat of hull breach. Remaining silent was crucial to avoid detection. Ultimately, Deru exploited a thermal layer in the water to confuse Japanese sonar and escape the relentless attack. Following this ordeal, Harder continued offensive operations. On September 19, a torpedo sank the Ketchisan Maru. On September 23, off Nagoya Bay, Harder destroyed 2 more targets, the 4,500-ton freighter Kamaru and the 5,800-ton tanker Daishin Maru. With her torpedo inventory exhausted, the submarine began the return journey, arriving at Pearl Harbor on October 8, 1943. This second patrol cemented Deru's reputation for boldness and resilience. 5 confirmed sinkings in just 14 days reflected exceptional performance under combat conditions. More importantly, surviving an intense, multi-day depth charge attack demonstrated Deru's psychological and tactical fortitude, proving his ability to endure extreme stress and continue offensive operations under conditions that would have overwhelmed many commanders. In late October 1943, Vice Admiral Charles Lockwood, the Pacific commander of submarines, directed the USS Harder to operate alongside USS Snook and USS Pargo. This trio was organized as a coordinated attack unit, commonly referred to as a wolf pack, tasked with targeting Japanese shipping near the Mariana Islands. On October 30, the 3 submarines set out with orders to disrupt enemy logistics in anticipation of the forthcoming American assault on Tarawa. The early stages of these Wolfpack missions were hampered by significant communication difficulties. During a joint engagement with Pargo on November 12 against a Japanese freighter, the results remained uncertain. Following this operation, Harder often found itself acting independently. On November 19, Harder identified a convoy consisting of 3 sizable Japanese freighters accompanied by escort vessels north of the Marianas. Positioning itself for an attack, Harder launched a salvo of 10 torpedoes, striking 2 of the ships. The vessel Udon Maru was sunk outright. As the escorts responded with depth charges, Harder pressed the assault, launching 2 additional torpedoes that successfully destroyed Hokaru. Rather than retreating under cover of night, Harder surfaced to periscope depth to pursue the third target, the 6,000-ton Nikko Maru. Despite sustaining heavy damage, the Japanese crew managed to keep the ship afloat through diligent damage control. Harder continued its attacks with multiple torpedoes, but it was only rough seas the following day that finally sank the freighter. The submarine returned to Pearl Harbor on November 30 and subsequently sailed to the Mare Island Naval Shipyard for maintenance and overhaul. Resuming operations in the Pacific, Harder arrived back at Pearl Harbor on February 27, 1944, and embarked on its fourth war patrol on March 16 alongside USS Seahorse. The submarines were assigned lifeguard duties, rescuing downed pilots during air raids. On April 1, during American strikes on WWII in the Caroline Islands, Harder received intelligence about an injured aviator stranded on a small Japanese-held island to the west of WWII. With air support providing protection, Harder maneuvered toward a reef and held position using both propellers while deploying a small boat through the surf to reach the shore. Despite Japanese sniper fire, the rescue was successful and pilot ensign John R. Galvin was recovered safely. However, the patrol's most notable event occurred 12 days later and had a lasting impact on American submarine tactics against destroyers. On April 13, north of the Western Caroline Islands, Harder was spotted by an enemy reconnaissance plane which relayed its position to the Japanese destroyer Ikazuchi. The destroyer immediately accelerated to engage, placing Harder in a highly perilous situation. Conventional naval doctrine dictated that submarines in such circumstances should dive to maximum depth and attempt to evade. Instead, Harder's commander executed a bold and unconventional maneuver, turning directly toward the oncoming destroyer. This tactic, later termed the down-the-throat shot, relied on a precise understanding of destroyer attack patterns. When a destroyer advances at full speed toward a submarine, it exposes its smallest cross-section but commits to a predictable path necessary to deploy depth charges. This moment of predictability creates a narrow window for the submarine to respond. By launching a concentrated spread of torpedoes with slight angular variation, a skilled submarine commander could target the charging vessel before it had any opportunity to evade. The destroyer's speed and commitment to its attack trajectory made timely evasive maneuvers nearly impossible. This method was particularly effective at close range or in poor visibility conditions where enemy lookouts had minimal reaction time. Crucially, its success depended on precise timing, accurate targeting, and the commander's ability to confront the advancing threat rather than evade it, an approach that ran counter to traditional submarine training, which emphasized diving and concealment over aggressive counterattack. As the Japanese destroyer Ikazuchi closed to within 900 yards, Commander D of the USS Harder, DIY, launched a salvo of 4 torpedoes, aiming directly at the oncoming vessel. Within 5 minutes, the destroyer had vanished beneath the ocean, its hull fragmented by multiple torpedo strikes. The incident was documented in D's TUR report to Naval Headquarters and quickly became renowned throughout the U.S. submarine community. By expending 4 torpedoes to sink a single destroyer, Harder had performed an operation that diverged sharply from existing submarine doctrine. Rather than merely defending itself from an attacking destroyer, D had intentionally engaged an enemy warship using a method that would soon influence submarine tactics across the Pacific theater. Just 4 days later, Harder sank the 7,000-ton merchant ship Matsumaru and inflicted damage on an accompanying escort. Continuing her offensive, she returned to Wally, surfacing on April 20th to shell a coastal target under the cover of a sudden rainstorm. The 4th patrol concluded at Fremantle Submarine Base in Western Australia on May 3, 1944. By the end of this patrol, Harder had not only sunk a destroyer with a pioneering tactic, but had also rescued a downed pilot under enemy fire, destroyed a merchant vessel, damaged another escort, and bombarded an enemy position. Yet even greater challenges lay immediately ahead. In April 1944, U.S. strategic planners reached a decisive conclusion that would determine Harder's 5th patrol. Intelligence obtained through ultra-code breaking revealed that the Imperial Japanese Navy had suffered significant destroyer losses during battles in the Solomon Islands. The resulting shortage of escort vessels posed a severe problem for Japan, which relied on them for convoy protection and fleet screening. Consequently, American command shifted its approach. Destroyers, previously considered secondary targets, were now to be attacked deliberately. Orders were issued from Commander Submarines Pacific, emphasizing the strategic importance of eliminating Japanese destroyers. Each sunk destroyer meant 1 fewer escort for convoys, 1 less shield for fleet carriers, and 1 fewer hunter of American submarines. Armed with this new directive, Commander D successfully lobbied for a patrol area near Tawi Tawi off the northeast coast of Borneo. The rationale was clear. Tawi Tawi's proximity to the Borneo oil fields allowed Japanese warships to refuel without making the increasingly hazardous journey back to home waters. American submarines had already disrupted Japanese oil supply lines so effectively that the fleet was compelled to operate near its fuel sources. Ultra-intelligence also indicated that significant Japanese naval forces, including destroyers, were concentrated around Tawi Tawi, providing an ideal hunting ground for a commander willing to take the fight to enemy escorts. On May 26, 1944, Harder departed Fremantle in company with USS Redfin, heading toward the Celebes Sea. This fifth patrol would later be regarded as one of the most remarkable submarine operations of World War II. Its initial phase involved special operations, the infiltration of heavily guarded straits to extract Australian commandos and Allied intelligence agents from Borneo. On the night of June 6, Harder entered the narrow and heavily patrolled Sibutu Passage between Tawi Tawi and northern Borneo. By 1930 hours, radar operators detected a convoy of 3 tankers escorted by 2 destroyers. Utilizing the submarine's superior speed on the surface, D maneuvered into an attack position. The moonlight betrayed Harder's presence, however, and the destroyer Minatsuki spotted the submarine and moved to engage. D immediately submerged and, at 2,159 hours, fired 3 torpedoes from a distance of 1,100 yards. 2 torpedoes struck their targets, sending Minatsuki to the bottom within 5 minutes. Only 45 crew members survived. Less than 20 minutes later, radar detected a second destroyer rapidly closing from 14,000 yards. Conventional tactics would have dictated withdrawal, but D chose a bold approach. He moved toward the oncoming vessel, waiting until the range had shrunk to 1,250 yards before unleashing all 6 bow torpedoes at 2,242 hours. The enemy captain skillfully evaded the salvo, forcing Harder to dive to 400 feet and prepare for depth charges. A combination of sea conditions and a thermal layer allowed the submarine to survive the counterattack that continued until midnight. This encounter confirmed that close-range engagements or attacks under restricted visibility maximized the effectiveness of D's aggressive tactics, whereas skilled enemy captains could evade at longer ranges in clear conditions. Despite the intense confrontations, Harder's mission pressed on. On the evening of June 7th, at 1,940 hours, she surfaced near the Borneo coastline, positioning herself just 6,000 yards offshore. From this location, Australian commandos Major William T. Jenkins and Sergeant Stanley W. Dodds launched 2 folding canoes and paddled toward the beach, guided by Harder's radar and coordinated via walkie-talkie. Just over 2 hours later, the team successfully recovered 6 operatives from the Australian Special Reconnaissance Department Z Unit. By 130 hours on June 8th, the submarine Harder had returned to a safe position. Later that evening, while navigating back through the Sibutu Passage, the lookout reported the presence of 2 Japanese destroyers patrolling a narrow section just 6 miles from the fleet's anchorage. These vessels were operating in parallel, maintaining a line abreast formation to maximize sonar coverage across the passage. Harder executed a submerged approach, remaining undetected as it closed the distance. When the submarine was approximately 1,000 yards from the targets, 4 torpedoes were launched at the overlapping destroyers. The second and third torpedoes struck the destroyer Tanakaze with devastating effect, triggering a massive explosion from her boilers and causing the ship to sink almost immediately. The fourth torpedo hit the other destroyer, producing a blinding flash. Within minutes, both enemy vessels had vanished beneath the waves. Shortly afterward, Japanese aircraft arrived, initiating a series of depth charge attacks. Harder dove deep to evade detection and set a course southward toward Tawi Tawi to continue reconnaissance of the main anchorage. Post-war Japanese records confirmed Tanakaze's destruction. American observers documented a second explosion and the rapid disappearance of another destroyer, though post-war analysis could not definitively verify the fate of this second ship. Within just 2 days, Harder had achieved significant results. At least 2 confirmed enemy destroyers sunk, a possible third destroyed, Allied commandos rescued, and a highly defended approach to the Japanese fleet penetrated. The patrol continued with renewed intensity. On June 10, 1944, Harder identified a major Japanese task force composed of 3 battleships, 4 cruisers, and numerous screening destroyers, elements of the mobile fleet assembled under Admiral Jizaburo Ozawa for Operation Ago, a planned decisive engagement against American forces in the Philippine Sea. An overhead patrol aircraft detected the submarine at periscope depth and immediately alerted the escorts. A single destroyer detached from the formation, accelerating toward Harder at 35 knots with the intent of forcing her to submerge, marking her location with depth charges and allowing the main fleet to maneuver out of danger. The submarine's captain, Daniel DIY Deal, initiated an immediate torpedo attack while ordering a crash dive. Timing was critical. Firing too early would let the torpedoes pass harmlessly ahead. Firing too late risked the torpedoes not arming in time. Deal's execution was precise. As Harder descended, the torpedoes traveled toward the destroyer. In the 55 seconds before impact, the submarine maneuvered to a position nearly directly beneath the target. The resulting explosion enveloped Harder, shaking the vessel violently. Shock waves reverberated through the hull, light fixtures shattered, and crew members were thrown against bulkheads. Fragments of the destroyer rained down onto Harder, while the sounds of the ship breaking apart above were unmistakable: bulkheads splitting, machinery collapsing, and hull sections separating. Despite relentless depth charge attacks from the remaining Japanese escorts, Harder had already transmitted the fleet's location to Pearl Harbor. The intelligence provided by this contact report would prove crucial in the days leading up to the Battle of the Philippine Sea. When Harder finally surfaced that night to recharge batteries, the crew was physically drained and mentally exhausted. The official patrol report later noted that crew fatigue had reached dangerously high levels on multiple occasions. On June 11th, Harder conducted further reconnaissance of the Tawi Tawi anchorage, observing additional Japanese cruisers and destroyers preparing for Operation Ago. At 1600 hours, the submarine departed for open waters and transmitted detailed reports to Admiral Raymond Spruance's Fifth Fleet. This intelligence was instrumental in the American preparation for one of the largest naval battles of the war. Over the course of the 5-day operation from June 6 to June 10, USS Harder had engaged numerous enemy destroyers, achieving at least 3 confirmed sinkings with the possibility of more. Daniel Deal would later receive the Medal of Honor for his actions during this patrol. Official citations credited him with sinking 5 destroyers in 5 short-range torpedo attacks. Although post-war verification of all Japanese losses was complicated by incomplete records and destroyed documentation, multiple sources, including American observers, Japanese accounts, and survivor testimony, supported the claims of multiple destroyer losses. The strategic impact of Harder's patrol extended well beyond individual ship sinkings. Japanese command, including Admiral Tawi Tawi, monitored the rising number of contact reports with mounting concern. The intelligence gathered during these operations played a decisive role in shaping the outcomes of subsequent engagements in the Philippine Sea. Several Japanese destroyers were lost in rapid succession, and intelligence reports indicated that enemy submarines had breached the Tawi Tawi defensive perimeter. The repeated losses prompted Admiral Soimu Toyoda to conclude that Tawi Tawi was no longer a safe anchorage for the Imperial Japanese Navy. On June 13, 1944, he directed Admiral Jizaburo Ozawa's mobile fleet to depart the area immediately, a full day earlier than originally scheduled. This sudden withdrawal disrupted the execution of Operation Ago, leaving Japanese carriers unprepared and complicating coordination with land-based air units. Furthermore, Ozawa's forces were forced to reduce speed in the Philippine Sea to allow slower units to regroup, sacrificing crucial positioning time ahead of the anticipated confrontation. When the Battle of the Philippine Sea commenced on June 1922, 1944, American forces inflicted a devastating defeat on the Japanese. Carrier-based aircraft and anti-aircraft fire annihilated nearly 480 Japanese planes in an encounter American pilots famously dubbed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Submarine attacks played a decisive role. USS Albacore. The battle shattered Japan's carrier air capability, effectively eliminating its ability to conduct major naval aviation operations for the remainder of the war. USS Harder's patrols around Tawi Tawi were among the operations that contributed directly to this outcome. Toyota's decision to hasten the fleet's departure stemmed largely from submarine activity that had sunk multiple destroyers and created the impression of a persistent submarine blockade around the anchorage. The actions of a single, determined submarine commander influenced the timing and movement of the Japanese fleet and indirectly contributed to the catastrophic defeat of Japanese naval aviation. After these operations, USS Harder returned to Darwin, Australia, arriving on June 21, 1944 to resupply with torpedoes. Following patrols in the Flores Sea, she completed this mission at Darwin on July 3. Commander Samuel Dealey was recognized for extraordinary heroism. General Douglas MacArthur personally awarded him the Distinguished Service Cross, while the Medal of Honor citation commended his audacious leadership and the destruction. The citation highlighted Dealey's courage, skill, and unwavering commitment to duty. The entire crew of Harder was also awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for exceptional combat performance, solidifying the submarine's enduring motto, "Hit them harder." On August 5, 1944, Harder embarked on her sixth and final war patrol, leading a three-submarine wolfpack alongside USS Harder under Chester Nimitz Jr. and USS Hake, commanded by Frank Haler. Their mission targeted Japanese shipping along the western coast of the Philippines, south of the Luzon Strait. Ultra-intelligence indicated that convoy Honey 171 had taken shelter in Palawan Bay, and Harder, Harder, and three other submarines assembled to intercept it, with Dealey assuming tactical command as senior officer present afloat. On August 21, the convoy departed Palawan Bay at 545 hours. The coordinated submarine strike destroyed 4 Japanese merchant ships, totaling 22,400 tons. The following day, August 22, Harder and Hardo sank 2 escort vessels, Matsuo and Hibari, Kaiboken-class ships tasked with protecting convoys. That evening, USS Hake rejoined the Wolfpack. At dawn on August 23, Hado attacked and fatally damaged the destroyer Asakaze near Cape Bolinao. With torpedoes running low, Hado withdrew to resupply, leaving Harder and Hake to continue operations in the hazardous waters off Luzon. Before dawn on August 24, 1944, Hake detected 2 Japanese ships exiting Dassel Bay, an aged destroyer and the escort frigate CD-22. The older destroyer turned back while CD-22 continued on patrol. Commander Haler maneuvered Hake for an attack but hesitated due to an unfavorable tactical position. During the maneuver, he observed Harder's periscope at 647 hours. The presence of 2 submarines in the confined area created a complex and highly dangerous tactical environment, while CD-22's sonar likely detected at least one of them. By 710 hours, Haler assessed that the escort might be tracking multiple targets, creating further uncertainty about engagement decisions. This combination of aggressive submarine tactics, coordinated wolfpack operations, and the earlier disruption of Japanese fleet movements illustrates the critical impact of U.S. submarine forces in undermining Japanese naval strength in the Pacific and shaping the outcome of the Philippine Sea campaign. At 728 hours, the crew of USS Harder experienced the violent detonation of 15 depth charges in rapid succession. The submarine's final engagement had almost certainly been with the Japanese escort vessel CD-22, Commander Samuel Dealey. Dealey had relied on a tactic that had repeatedly succeeded on earlier missions, positioning the submarine for an optimal strike, calculating the torpedo firing solution, and executing the attack with precision. This time, however, the torpedoes failed to find their mark. 2 missed to the port side and 1 veered to starboard. The reasons for the failure are unclear. It may have been an error in estimating range, an unexpected maneuver by CD-22 at a decisive moment, or a technical malfunction in the torpedoes themselves. What is certain is that CD-22 survived the encounter and launched a fierce counterattack, deploying 15 depth charges in a concentrated pattern. The explosions occurred at the depth where Harder was operating, crushing her pressure hull and sinking the submarine with all 79 personnel aboard. Commander Dealey, 37 years old, perished alongside his crew, marking the end of his command after 6 wartime patrols. The loss of Harder sent shockwaves through the American submarine community. Some believe Dealey had simply run out of luck after numerous high-risk engagements. Others argued he may have crossed the fine line between daring tactics and recklessness. Debates over the circumstances would persist among submariners and historians for decades. Questions remained: had the aggressive approach that proved effective against large fleet destroyers been less suited for smaller, more agile escort vessels? Had the strain of continuous operations impaired judgment and timing, or had CD-22's captain executed a perfectly timed evasive maneuver? The answer likely encompassed all these factors, illustrating that direct engagement tactics were never guaranteed. Success depended on favorable conditions, flawless timing, and an element of fortune. Yet focusing solely on the loss of Harder obscures the broader significance of Commander Dealey's career. When Dealey assumed command in December 1942, prevailing American submarine doctrine emphasized avoidance of Japanese destroyers, which were highly dangerous adversaries. Submarines were expected to dive rapidly and evade at maximum depth whenever confronted by these hunters. Dealey challenged this principle through action rather than theory. He observed that destroyers committed to aggressive attacks often followed predictable paths for brief but critical intervals, creating a window of vulnerability. A commander with steady nerves and precise timing could exploit that moment to fire torpedoes directly at the approaching destroyer before descending beneath it. Between April and June 1944, Dealey applied this method to devastating effect, sinking multiple Japanese destroyers and fundamentally altering how submarine captains in the Pacific approached such encounters. The innovation spread quickly as other commanders adopted similar tactics. The psychological effect was immediate. Japanese destroyer captains, once confident hunters, now faced the possibility that their quarry could strike back. This forced them to pursue submarines more cautiously, diminishing their effectiveness and eroding their tactical advantage. Conversely, American submarine crews gained confidence that destroyers could be confronted and defeated, not merely evaded. The strategic implications extended beyond individual ship sinkings. Dealey's persistent operations around Tawi Tawi compelled Admiral Toyoda to withdraw the Japanese fleet earlier than planned, disrupting Operation Ago and contributing to American success at the Battle of the Philippine Sea. In this way, the efforts of a single submarine had ramifications at the fleet level, demonstrating how tactical innovation could achieve strategic effect. Over 6 war patrols, USS Harder sank 16 enemy vessels totaling 54,020 tons. Post-war assessments recognized DY as the highest-scoring American submarine commander of World War II. His submarine accounted for 4 confirmed fleet destroyers and 2 Kyoko-class coastal defense vessels, the most enemy warships destroyed by any U.S. submarine. Harder earned 6 battle stars and the Presidential Unit Citation for her wartime accomplishments. Statistics alone, however, failed to convey the tactical transformation Dealey initiated. Prior to his command, U.S. submarines avoided destroyers whenever possible. After Dealey's patrols, submarines could actively engage them. His approach became standard doctrine, disseminated throughout the Pacific Fleet via patrol reports, tactical discussions, and training. Other commanders successfully employed these tactics throughout the war's final year, inflicting heavy, sustained losses on Japanese destroyer forces that they never fully recovered from. In summary, Samuel Dealey's tenure aboard Harder represents more than the tally of ships sunk. It marks a shift in submarine warfare itself. Through a combination of courage, precise timing, and tactical ingenuity, Dealey transformed submarines from evasive predators into offensive threats capable of challenging even the most formidable escorts. His legacy endured in the doctrine, confidence, and operational success of the U.S. submarine force long after Harder was lost. During World War II, American submarines proved to be among the most effective tools in crippling Japan's maritime strength. Over the course of the conflict, U.S. Submarines destroyed 1,314 enemy vessels, totaling approximately 5.3 million tons, which accounted for more than half 55% of all Japanese ships lost in the war. By disrupting the vital sea lanes connecting Japan to its resource-rich territories, submarines severely weakened the nation's war economy, cutting off crucial supplies and raw materials necessary for sustaining military operations. Beyond commerce raiding, submarines actively hunted Japanese warships, targeting aircraft carriers, battleships, and cruisers alike. Their role extended well beyond combat. They conducted reconnaissance missions, rescued downed pilots, inserted special operations teams behind enemy lines, and collected critical intelligence. These multifaceted operations showcased the versatility and strategic value of the so-called silent service. Admiral William Halsey, who commanded the Third Fleet in the Pacific, later emphasized the decisive role of specific technologies and platforms in the Allied victory, placing submarines above all other tools. He ranked radar second, aircraft third, and even bulldozers fourth. This recognition reflected not only the cumulative impact of submarine operations, but also the pioneering tactics introduced by commanders such as Samuel D. Dealey. Under their leadership, submarines evolved from cautious reconnaissance vessels into aggressive offensive units, striking Japanese shipping in ways that were both difficult to anticipate and nearly impossible to defend against. In May 2024, marking 80 years since the loss of USS Harder, the Loss 52 project confirmed the submarine's location in the South China Sea near Luzon, resting at a depth exceeding 3,000 feet. Imagery revealed a largely intact hull, with notable damage near the stern and around the conning tower consistent with depth charge attacks, including the strike by CD-22 that led to the vessel's sinking. The tactical innovations introduced by Dealey had far-reaching effects on submarine warfare. He demonstrated that submarines need not be passive, reactive platforms merely fleeing from enemy destroyers. Instead, under favorable circumstances, they could take the initiative and directly engage hostile warships. While this approach did not eliminate the inherent dangers posed by destroyers or make submarine operations risk-free, it expanded the operational possibilities available to submarine commanders. Japanese destroyer crews gradually became more cautious in 1944 and 1945, aware that submarines could strike preemptively. This psychological impact alone reduced their effectiveness, altering operational patterns even when direct combat did not occur. Convoys sailed with fewer escorts as losses mounted faster than replacements could be produced, and fleet maneuvers were increasingly hampered by insufficient protective screening. Persistent submarine operations, including Dealey's emphasis on attacking destroyers, significantly degraded Japanese naval capabilities across multiple fronts. Samuel D. Dealey commanded the USS Harder on 6 war patrols spanning nearly 2 years. During this period, he sank 16 enemy ships and repeatedly engaged destroyers using methods that would transform submarine doctrine. For his achievements, he received the Medal of Honor and other high military distinctions. His intelligence gathering and aggressive tactics influenced broader fleet operations and reshaped how submarine warfare was conducted in the Pacific. Tragically, on August 24, 1944, at the age of 37, Dealey lost his life attempting a final assault when the tactics that had served him well no longer succeeded. USS Harder now rests over 3,000 feet beneath the Philippine Sea, a silent monument to both exceptional skill and ultimate sacrifice. Her crew lies alongside her, their legacy preserved in the tactical principles that spread throughout the U.S. submarine service. The doctrines they developed and the determination they displayed helped strangle Japanese maritime power, directly contributing to the Allied victory in the Pacific. The paradigm shift introduced by Dealey and other